Oh. Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's go time. I really feel like because there's two and then one. I almost feel like we should do something like this, but then I'm just comically small.
Yeah, then you're like, you're doing like the Zoom meeting and you're presenting it to everybody. You're like, hey, these are the two
I
guys
am
that are.
presenting to everybody for Best of Our Week the TK and Josh show. So welcome everybody.
JV and TK, that's what you're getting.
That's exactly what you get. It's been
Aloha.
I was gonna say aloha. The outfit is not comically done just for show. We actually you could grab the mug right there. I have my we grabbed the aloha mug, which it has some hot sauce.
Oh, you have
inside.
good. You have good autofocus, right? There we
Yeah,
go.
product mode is on. We are in good company. Sony, welcome, and thank you for the savings on there. So I asked Josh and I said, hey man, we're doing a podcast because originally I was going to borrow some of his lighting kit because the room I thought was going to be horribly bad, but it's okay. I mean, it's a podcast.
It's cozy.
It's cozy.
It's
It's very
nice and
cozy.
cozy in there. So I
In
think
Hawaii,
it's a good
all
luck.
the way 5 to 6 hours away from where you are.
Although I will say, there comes a point in time where you're doing this content enough to where anything less than daylight white balance, you hate it. This is too warm, and I'm already sleepy.
Well, I hope we keep it entertained. So I'll go ahead and close this guy since we're not using it. But I hope everybody's doing good. Welcome back to another episode of the Best of Our Week after after a hiatus last week for Thanksgiving holiday, which we will talk about a little bit as that part still impacts Hawaii more than you think it would. But yeah, Best of Our Week after dark.
After dark.
We're doing it live. That's how we do it.
We're going to take this show from rated G to rated PG. All right.
It never gets old. Your radio voice always kicks in.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you should be moderating this event.
I've been ripping off voice actors for years. It's good times.
That's how we do it.
In a world where
Where Juan is sitting. No, just kidding.
No, see, I mean, the bad thing is, like, I wish I could really pull off movie trailer, but it's really just that pukey, like, radio announcer voice. Like, I can't quite get deep enough to, like, really pull off, like, movie trailer.
well,
So
it's either the radio voice or it's like the newscaster voice where you're
Yeah.
like, and that's how the cookie crumbles.
Absolutely.
It's like the
It is one
inflection
of
that
those-
it just doesn't resemble any human speech at all, but it's very clear, so you understood all of the syllables that they had to say.
Always, always. Speaking of which, I hope everybody's watching is actually doing good. I hope you guys had a great week. If you celebrated Thanksgiving last week, hope you guys had a great week as well as some good deals you were able to pick up from Black Friday, Cyber Monday, all of that stuff. Juan and I had obviously skipped last week mostly because of family. As you can imagine, with Thanksgiving, it was a little bit hard to tell at least on my side, tell my family. It's like, hold on a second, I gotta I gotta go hang out with my buddy, and so we chose to have a little bit of time, and I think you were also traveling as well, Juan. So now it's my
yeah,
turn.
I was hitting the road, and no, I mean, your turn. You actually managed to secure a location where you could podcast. I was breaking it down and like what I would have needed to do last week for the show. I was in like the high California mountains, and so I was basically on a 2G data connection going 80 miles an hour. So it just wasn't going to happen, which was kind of a bummer. But again, like I hope everyone had. Yeah, exactly. I guess I'm gonna, through interpretive dance and Morse code, tell you what I think about smartphones. But no, I hope everybody had a lovely Thanksgiving. This was a biggie for us and our family because this is the first time we've all tried to get together since before the pandemic. And you again, it's when you get to kind of spend some time with people that you care about and who care about you. You didn't know how much you were missing it until you were sort of back. So again, I hope people have been taking those opportunities as we're getting into the holiday season. Hopefully you have some of those opportunities. And even if it's just meaningful quality time digitally, we're hosting the kind of show where we'd want to talk about better tools to make sure that you can hook up with your family and friends and get some FaceTime with them.
Oh my God, a lot of technologies this week. So it's as you probably saw from the title, the big event, the big thing going on this week is the Qualcomm Summit, or the Snapdragon Summit actually is in Hawaii, and Today was the last day. I mean, obviously there wasn't any announcements today, but today was like the last day where we were able to do extra stuff. I can probably say that there was some benchmarks done today that we'll be able to hopefully share with you
But
at
that's
some
all.
point.
That's all we can say.
Yeah, that's all I can
all you
say.
can
I can
Yeah.
say some benchmarks were performed on some things, and later we will know more.
Although I will admit, like having a benchmarking app that is cut off from internet access was like an interesting thing to see, and it was like, wow, you covered your bases really
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah. There was no chance somebody was going to submit something and automatically kind of like,
So,
yeah, no.
so basically, what you two guys are telling me is that Qualcomm is super afraid of MediaTek, and basically, it's game over, and dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
It's all, and that's done. And thank you for joining the show. Appreciate your time. And,
This is like the most efficient show we've ever produced.
Which Wi-Fi are you on, by the way? Because if you're on the Qualcomm Wi-Fi, this is gonna be.
no. It's about to get cut. No, I'm on Fairmont. I think I'm.
Okay,
Yeah. I'm running. I made sure on the hotel one. And this is the basic, so I'm hoping it hangs good. I see.
Which would also be a bad look for Qualcomm if you guys are like, hey, are you guys on the Qualcomm network? Because it's sort of their job.
There's a few things in there, but the hotel when we first checked in, they were like, hey, would you want the basic Wi-Fi or the premium Wi-Fi?
Okay, so like I'm driving through the Southwest, and that never makes a difference. It'd be like we've been through so many, reasonably priced hotels that, like we don't go cheap. We're like comfortable mid-range accommodations, and you spend your extra $5 or $10 for the day to get the better Wi-Fi's. And I go to do a speed test, and it's like 4 megabits up, and you're like, come on.
They're still on the old standard where it's like, high speed is 5 megabits now.
That's my favorite part. Is every time we have these events, they always talk about like the future of Wi-Fi and the future Wi-Fi 6E
Wi-Fi 6E
or whatever
is a
the
big
case
thing
may
that-
be, and it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
well, I'm over
10
here with
gigabit
2 bars.
5G downloads nowhere.
So surprisingly, yeah. So 5G, for some reason, okay. So last time when we were doing this in Maui, the 5G connectivity was much faster. But for some reason, at least where we are, although we get like 5 bars, the connection isn't as strong. Like at least for me on T-Mobile,
Well-
I'm not really getting the speeds I'm normally used to back
Okay,
home.
so I mean, like, let's lean into some of their conversation because Qualcomm has a bunch of things that we're going to talk about, and I want to keep this one a little bit more efficient than what we usually ramble on, where we say we're going to do like a 90-minute show, and then 3 hours later we're still talking, because there's definitely
we're
things
still
that you guys
enjoying
want to
the
go and do while you're still on the ground in Hawaii. I know TK, it'd be nice for you to actually get a little time off in one of the world's most beautiful locales. So like networking really
Oh, that's
did
cool.
seem to be.
I am alone here, so clearly I have no agenda. So like, I have been the 15th wheel this whole trip.
But no, seriously, on a serious note though, he's been absolutely amazing. Like setting up things, getting it. He got here a day in advance. We went to a coffee farm, Kona Coffee
we went to a
Farm,
coffee farm, yeah.
and it was honestly like some of the best stuff. Before I ended up basically disappearing from my family because, Tuesday morning. I told my family from like Tuesday morning to like Thursday afternoon.
I just need to
basically,
point
I don't
out
exist.
that my call for making our show more streamlined and efficient was to benefit
Was me.
you as the guest, Josh, and you derailed us, and now we're taking longer. So I just need you to know that as 15th wheel status, you are delaying this process, and I was trying to throw you a bone.
I'm hurting for like just interactions right now.
It has been good, but yeah, you're right. The biggest thing, so obviously going on this week, we had a triple chipset announcement from Qualcomm. Not one, not two, but 3 basically, and one that was entirely new, the G series, that wasn't even there before. But the biggest thing I think I probably would say is the fact that we actually also had access to demos, units to be able to check out and play with, the different technologies that they announced. It wasn't just announcements, we had the opportunity to check them out. And they had different locales, different positions, different areas, and I've been trying to cover as much as I can. Josh is doing as much as he can as well. So honestly, the only thing missing really, dude, seriously, it's you. And I want to see, and I want to make it so that next year when this happens again, we're having a podcast together, sitting around the table and talking about it.
I
That's what I'd
actually,
like to
I mean, I really should try to make a little bit more noise, because especially from like the Snapdragon sound side of the equation, like all last
Totally.
year
Which
for me
is
was
a
talking
massive-
about
yeah.
wireless audio and stuff. So
And that's the other thing, yeah.
So I do kind of want to kind of lean into something that you just said there when we were kind of getting into this though. There's so much focus on things like device capabilities. Like I just put together another video for reviews.org talking about Wi-Fi signal transmission, trying to make that sound more entertaining for consumers. And one of the things you kind of keep breaking down is like, well, your phone does so much, your router or these antennas do so much, and then eventually you kind of hit this wall where it's the backhaul. And I would imagine year over year, you've been hitting the ground and going to these Hawaii summits, and 5G is now becoming a real attainable standard where someone who's shopping like a $400 phone, it's likely just included in their phone. We don't have to worry about variations to any larger degree. It would seem to me that in the midst of all of this amazing technology that's going to get improved in next generation SoCs, we're running into the real practical limits of all of the networking that actually powers the internet behind these towers and these radios and these modems and these routers. So what kind of sense did you get? I mean, Qualcomm is responsible for so much of this from the consumer side and from the sort of infrastructure side. I feel like it's a little bit of an incomplete conversation to just say, next year's SoC, Wi-Fi 6E, it's going to be amazeballs. If they had any kind of sense of what like the sort of grander image for all of this would look like.
So on the big portion that they focused on, although they mentioned Wi-Fi 6E, they did focus mostly on their connectivity over 5G and millimeter wave. They're basically wanting to push millimeter wave. Like I feel like and it's been the same conversation, I think even last year. Their partnership with Verizon has been basically driven to give them or try to give us the best capabilities when it comes to millimeter wave. But this year they're switching a little bit. They're focusing on the upload speed, which is something that they haven't focused before. Download speed has been basically king for everybody, but as creators, as companies want to be able to use millimeter wave, especially when you want to share content over millimeter wave, 4K or 1080p, you want the faster upload because that's the connectivity there, and they're basically tripling the connection there to up to almost like 3.5. Like they tripled it 3.5 times what a speed that we were getting before with millimeter wave. So that excited me the most. And when I was talking to Cristiano, when he saw me, he's like, "So you're a creator, so you must be really excited about our upload speed." I'm like, "Of course." I'm like, "You were talking to me."
You had a conversation with Cristiano?
So remember when we were doing the party where David Emil was singing a couple nights ago?
Yeah.
Okay. So I left the party because I was coming back to the room because I needed to edit a video, and I had like 2 plates of dessert, which is just a long story. And then, of course, as I'm walking back, not trying to look like I'm just taking stuff away, like I just stole stuff from this party, I run into the CEO of the company. So he looks at me and he's like, a lot of desserts. I'm like, family back in the room. I gotta, So I said, thank you very much for the party. And then he saw my name tag and he's like, so you're in YouTube, right? So you must have loved the upload speed that we uploaded. So I'm like, yeah, no, definitely. You were speaking to me and I really appreciated it. So it was a very passing, not very, very complicated conversation.
Well, it's so funny that you made that distinction that the upstream is something that would be important for us, the people who are attending this conference. And yet the only time I heard them make that mention was when you ran into them with dessert in your hand. Like they should have made a bigger fuss about it on stage.
They should have made it much bigger. Yeah. And I found out 2 days later that apparently, so one of the things they also did is they did an 8K video conversation, a video with, I think was it the Verizon CEO live.
Yeah.
And for that, they brought an actual mobile hotspot. They created their own mobile hotspot from Verizon that I didn't even realize it was there because I couldn't even test their speed that. But supposedly that's how you were able to get some crazy, like almost, they broke the 3 gigabits down. Like that's how bad, like how really fast.
Well, there was some speculation from us in the audience whether or not that was a real call.
But
there was one telltale sign was that the Verizon CEO at one point said, "We're so grateful to have Snapdragon in our devices." So I'm like, maybe it is a real one.
That would have been edited out if it had.
Exactly.
That would have been caught if it wasn't. Yeah, no.
So I love that we can kind of frame just different specific jobs that we work in a very kind of creative industry and we're responsible for producing and sharing and distributing content. These are some of the again, I'm talking about my gig over at reviews.org a lot, but they're some of the hardest conversations we've been having behind the scenes is because so much of their rating and reviews on carrier issues have all been focused on download. And I think if anything has kind of kicked our butts over the last 2 years of shelter in place and work from home and school from home, it's so many people's inability to participate. If you can't get your content up to the internet, you don't exist. And yet another road trip through the Southwest where I can shoot this incredible 4K video. I can edit from my phone. I can do filters. I can do transitions. I've got an unlimited soundtrack at my fingertips, all the music and licensing and everything that I want to be able to handle with transitions and motion graphics, all from a phone screen. And I can finish it off in like 4K 60. And then it's going to take me 2 days to upload it.
Yep.
And it's not that big of a video. That's how slow, like rural Colorado is if I want to try and get work done on the road. And so it immediately cuts all of those people. They're irrelevant to the 21st century. They do not exist if they can't contribute something to these kinds of conversations.
It's definitely one of the biggest things that we realized over the last 1.5 to 2 years. The pandemic focused heavily on. One of them obviously is our Wi-Fi connections, which I feel like Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 6E can help us not only to get better signals but also get better speeds. The concern though that most of us don't realize is that we don't really pay attention to the Wi-Fi. Like the Wi-Fi is it's a background, it's a hidden factor. But those are the things that I think once you upgrade to a better mesh router or a better connected home, so you get better coverage, where devices with the Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 6E can get the benefit of that, of getting stronger signals and basically better performance ahead of what Wi-Fi 7 is going to end up becoming, where MediaTek was talking Wi-Fi 7 at their event a couple of weeks ago. So there's a little bit of a shift between Qualcomm and MediaTek. Qualcomm is very much partnering up with Verizon. I think T-Mobile was also kind of a little bit of a presence here yesterday.
More or less.
More or less, yeah. Not an announcement, but more of a I want to say honorable mention, but it was nice. It was a good.
T-Mobile's always going to try to be the party guys because that was really what it was.
Yeah,
it was just a happy hour with T-Mobile. We were like, so what are you guys doing here? We're like this.
It was a nice little gathering, but I think the big focus for me again it is the connectivity and the upload speeds, but. My worry mostly is that they're focusing so heavily on millimeter wave, which in my opinion is great in crowded areas or in stadiums and so on. But the fact of the matter is we're still not anywhere close to getting millimeter wave to spread as much as sub-6. So sub-6 for us is the biggest thing that we need to drive for. I did notice also that Qualcomm dropped the 5G from their naming, so they're no longer trying to bring a focus to it since it's kind of an implied included technology now in the Snapdragon ecosystem. Because they brought it even down to the 4 series, right? They were talking about the 4 series, the 6 series, 7 series. You have 5G across everything. So that's actually a good move where it stops becoming this, marketing campaign like, it has 5G in it, as opposed to this is just the best that you can get at this price.
And Josh, was it one of the conversations that we had? I mean, I want to say we were at the end of 2019 talking about this is basically vaporware until people can just count on any phone they might buy. You walk out the door from a Boost Mobile with the phone they gave you for free, and if that has 5G on it, then 5G is a real thing. If 5G is only available on like $1,000 phones, I swear we had this conversation. I might totally be making it up. But if not, I'm sure we've both had similar talking points on some of these things, but
Agreed,
it feels like we're close enough.
Say.
I feel like we're getting close to this idea that 5G is now an actual real thing if we can continue to count on it at, the $300 tier, the Poco tier, the sort of premium mid-ranger tier. We don't have to spend 600 plus to try and
the
get
Nord.
But it really does seem like we're at that point, to be honest. But I don't remember the specific conversation that we had, but I know that we've probably talked about it in one way or another. The thing is, when it comes to the 5G stuff, yes, it's a real thing, but I just don't know if it's something that we can rely upon just yet. Just because it says 5G on a lot of phones at any different price bracket doesn't mean we're actually getting those speeds, at least in the US. Because in Asia, I think it's much more ubiquitous than here, which is like, gosh, I wish that we could have that kind of connectivity in the States. But yeah, even on my Pixel 6, which I've been using this week, every time it says 5G, I'm still waiting for a lot of things.
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to say. Is it's a weird thing. Like Verizon does that as well. I mean, we had the E thing situation with the 5G E on T-Mobile on AT&T, But although the
Yeah.
phones now, and I think it's becoming across the border where they just want to show the 5G if the phone has a 5G modem in it. But I don't think
Right.
we're getting 5G connection. Verizon,
Well,
it's been
here's-
5G ever since I landed, and it's LTE every time I do speed tests.
Here's where I really feel the marketing has kind of kicked these companies in their own gonads. What we were talking about, you can put the world's fastest router on a dial-up connection. You still have a dial-up connection. It doesn't matter if you've got a
Dial-up, yeah.
Wi-Fi 6E router connected to your 56K modem. You still have 56K, and we can keep making these towers, more impressive for local area networking style speed testing. But if we don't improve our sort of infrastructure and our neighborhood backhaul, like if we're not really running additional fiber and we're not really lighting it up, then you don't get those speeds. I really feel it was a missed opportunity for them to start the conversation with 5G on the things that 5G tangibly brings a benefit to. So even if you're still on LTE speeds, with these new antenna arrays, it's far more likely you're going to maintain those more consistent LTE speeds with less interference and with less network congestion, especially in busier population areas.
So yeah, you're taking
that
me
to
back
me
to the Verizon
back
not Verizon,
last
Sprint
year.
conversation. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. When we were doing that Sprint visit,
Sitting with
I'm
Verizon.
not particularly
Sprint,
excited
sorry.
by millimeter wave because of the limitations of millimeter wave. I am ridiculously excited about better stability, better connectivity, and less, sort of network and traffic issues.
Mid-band 5G has been crazy good on T-Mobile now that they've activated the Sprint bands.
Yeah.
It's depending where you are, if you're in an area that supports it, like you can start seriously 700 megabits down. It's actually that good.
I'm over here just hoping that I get that on Google Fi, because it's like it's still so nebulous what exactly they're using.
It depends on because they keep switching you between the different servers. But at least on T-Mobile in Santa Clarita, where I am, I now get the which is like 5G UC. That's the logo that I get on the actual ultra capacity. So it's decent. I'm happy.
For us, when I was in the previous Gadget Lab, there was basically one tower that we could reliably get service from, and it was a T-Mobile 5G tower. And at the time, we were on Google Fi. And basically, when you don't give Google Fi any other options, it'll find the tower that you want, and then it'll connect to it, and you get the 5Gs. If you give it any kind of option, it'll somehow find the lowest common denominator path to like the slowest network that it can sustain.
It's definitely a big challenge. I mean, like I said, this is why my concern was essentially, I understand why Qualcomm wants to focus on millimeter wave. It's obviously the fastest connection that you can do.
It's the biggest numbers and it's
upload
the
speed.
most exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, Sony also did the same thing. They worked with Verizon on their Pro line. That's obviously because it's for creators for broadcast. You go to where the speeds are, but 5G sub 6 is literally where it's everywhere. Every country has 5G sub 6, and I think that's what we need now is better support and more stability and better bandwidth. And I feel like they need to just drop the whole, if it's not really 5G, just say 4G LTE. You're not going to lose the customer.
LTE plus.
Yeah, or LTE plus, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just add something to it. Maybe happy smiley face at the top right so people know that it's cool.
But because of this dance, and I think because of the messaging, I think a lot of consumers have kind of fallen into the snake oil trap when there are some tangible benefits that I think, again, they might not have been the most exciting, they might not have had the sexiest speed numbers, but I do want to use this, and again, like I said, I want to try and keep this a little bit more condensed. We started off with network and connectivity, kind of talking about like, so many more people on 5G networks where you're at, which means they're taxing that network,
system,
and you're probably not getting those impressive speeds because you're not the only nerds there with 5G phones like you were last year. I want to shift gears because we had a conversation about the Dimensity when MediaTek announced their phone, and I've been having a few concerns about the way we talk about mobile SoCs, tablet and smartphone processors, and how we keep talking about performance. And I don't think over the last, somewhere from the 865 over this last year, I don't think we've done a good job of discussing power and some of the trade-offs, the price performance power conversation. We're talking all new cores, ARM v9, the Cortex X2, the 710 series big cores, the 510 series little cores.
I think the 510, that's where the MediaTek one, yeah.
And I kind of just wanted to get your thoughts because there were a lot of headlines that came out. Here's this huge list of manufacturers that are going to be using this new Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, and Samsung was not on that list. Sort of discussed in this initial batch of smartphones going out. So again, I'd just like to kind of hear some of your thoughts. Obviously, you can't get too deep into the numbers with the benchmarking and stuff that you guys have been able to get hands-on with. But I'm sure you have other thoughts that are publicly appropriate to share, given the nature of non-disclosure agreements in our industry in
I mean,
this day and age.
You'd be surprised that that question did come up in part of the Q&As that came on afterwards.
I'm sure it was on a lot of people's minds.
Oh no! I mean, there was people. I mean, there were some questions even talking about with Google and obviously with Tensor and so on, and obviously the whole relationship. People were just literally asking these questions. I was very much surprised that I did not see the name there, because I felt like that name, if history has proven anything, that name would have been the first name on the list right after or right before Xiaomi. It would have been like the first two people that are basically clamoring on trying to release an SoC. I did hear some people were talking basically that they're still working with Samsung. It wasn't like an official statement or anything, but I did hear chatter that the conversation is still there. I'm still surprised why, like for an example, Sony wasn't there and Samsung wasn't there. And I don't know if it was just a matter of basically that the list was too long, or is it just like, it's a weird.
Well, it's funny how
we ran out of space. We couldn't put Samsung on there.
Hey,
if only this banner had been.
It was
No. In the alphabet, Sony does come after Samsung, so they just got pushed out. So.
Dang.
But it was funny because that list of OEMs that might be working with the or actually making something with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. Yes, what David and Mel on the Pocket Now podcast that we did earlier today pointed out was that. Okay, so they have the list up there, and clearly it did not have Google, but it was just funny that they still had a Google person come on stage and
Google
talk
was
with
on
them.
stage. Google, yeah. So they very much made sure people understood that they're still working with Google, and yeah, that list.
There's a weird thing happening right now where every company is slowly starting to go, this is the line in the sand, but it's still murky. And all of the companies are just trying to figure out where those lines are. So we still don't know if Samsung is going to be making their own chip. I don't see why not at this point if everyone else is.
I mean, there are rumors that Oppo is even building their own
exactly.
SoC, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if it ends up becoming a situation where every manufacturer makes their own SoC, and at that point, I mean, so yeah, the reality is there are possibilities. Obviously, Exynos could become, the only SoC that Samsung carries now that they have obviously Tensor with Google and Qualcomm. But it was funny. Like I saw the list and I wanted to ask somebody straight up, but I didn't. Somebody else asked the question. Like I said, they said they're still working with Samsung, but it just wasn't part of the.
You're gonna get such a bureaucratic answer at that moment, because if you just put your hand up like, what happened to Samsung, guys, and they're just like, they're still there.
They're there. They're there. Just
They're like, listen, we love our relationship with Samsung, and then it just turns into this whole hunk thing.
Yeah, it was definitely some things were a little bit murky. Let's just say that.
I will say though, I will be honestly surprised if we find ourselves in a world in this upcoming few months where Samsung doesn't use them at all. Because I think it'd be hard, especially on the A series, because they rely on their chipsets, because it's much cheaper, because their Exynos doesn't actually, with their benefits, I think overall the A series benefit from having the low power Qualcomm SoCs. So for them to be totally separate, I mean, even Google still uses Qualcomm technically, if you think about it. But there's so many things that Snapdragons bring to the table that I think they can't just leave it on the table.
Yeah.
Right? Like Samsung can't just be like, oh, we're going to not have lossless audio. We're going to not have all of this other stuff.
That's kind of the curious thing is obviously in sort of the diehard enthusiast sector is, obviously Samsung is going to push Exynos with their AMD relationship, and that's what's going to blow the doors off 2022. But again, kind of coming back to what we're seeing in Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, we're getting some refinements on the 888. There's some really big claims being made about increasing performance and reducing power draw.
Yeah, exactly.
I know when we had our MediaTek conversation, I feel like the walkaway, the thing I keep coming back to, is I sort of wish that Android manufacturers and the SoCs that Android phones use would maybe have an off year. This year for Apple wasn't particularly mind-blowing in terms of performance improvements, but at the same time, they refined their A-series processor and figured out that a physically larger battery would be gooder for the iPhone 2. And I kind of wish we would get that here. There's still there's still so much performance overhead on an 865 that we're barely touching with so many of these apps. And if we could kind of take a year just to really focus on refinement, you gave me the same performance as an 888, but you could cut like 30% off of that power draw. That to me, I think would be more exciting to a number of enthusiasts out there than trying to say like, well, yeah, it gets 30% more powerful, but then it gets hotter 30% faster, and then it throttles 30% faster to lower than what you used to have when you had an 865 is kind of the fear I think a lot of us are seeing in this kind of arms race for trying to make the mostest powerful SoC.
It's a big part of the conversation that I feel like they need to come down to, and they will not come down, but have that conversation with OEMs when they're putting in their SoCs. I think that's the biggest concern, where the 888 wasn't, the devices I felt like in the beginning of the year for the 888 weren't built for the 888. They were built with the 865 mindset, not appreciating that the 888 is a warmer and a more power, I guess, it's a more powerful SoC, but it was also running hotter, and you didn't get the right, heat dissipation, and then we also had OnePlus kind of going on with trying to, limit the performance of the actual system, so that you had that different experience by different companies trying to manage what Qualcomm put into the system. And I'm hoping it with the 8, with the Snapdragon 8 that we do get that benefit. It's hard to tell. There obviously we need to see how the OEMs approach to it. The hardware that we were looking at and we all played around are all reference devices.
Of
so
course.
They're not real.
That's how it always is.
Yeah. It's not real representation of how this is going to be in the real world.
Well, that's a conversation we have all the time with Snapdragon Summits and the new announcements. Is that Qualcomm, to their credit, provide a billion different switches. But what OEM is going to leave all of them on? And what are they going to pick and choose to leave on?
Yeah.
And even then, like the whole power conversation, like I find it so funny that like maybe this will be a slight pivot or a segue into whatever topic comes next, but when it comes to the world of gaming phones that we have experienced over the last couple of years, it has proven to us that while these processors are great and provide that premium experience when it comes to gaming and whatnot, it's not just about the processor. You need to build everything around it to support what that processor can do. Yep. Hence, cooling. Hence, good power like a battery or anything like that. And I gotta say, if we keep into the theme of this show, I gotta say, best of my week has been that G3X. With the full gaming platform,
full game. So
that has been the best of my week for sure.
After the benchmarking session, when I was waiting for Miriam, I actually played for about 20 minutes on it. They had an extra one in the press room.
Oh, nice.
So precisely, and again, thank you, Josh, as a host for managing that segue. I like to call out good segues and slam the brakes on the show to point out the segue, even though we were really into a better conversation.
So you just
the segue hit a rock. Yeah,
exactly. You went toppling over like a former president. The notion of that to me, because we were just talking about, hey, everyone might be coming out with their own SoC, and I really feel like we're going to be leaning into a market that is, why try to force a general purpose computing platform to do something like handheld gaming if we're already getting much more specific about refining the specific manufacturing process for all of these different devices. And so that notion of a Qualcomm Razer partnership, again, this is early. It's going to be first gen. I would definitely say that this is like, you want to be at the bleeding edge of this kind of idea. But if it can kind of highlight a little bit more attention on Android gaming and games.
That's how much bleeding edge I want it to be. But yeah, sorry.
This thing needed to be made yesterday.
But that's just it. I've been a big advocate for mobile gaming and trying to highlight once you get past the sort of like nasty, gross, just like, money squeezing games that are all proliferating through the iTunes,
iTunes,
Apple App Store and the Google Play App Store. you actually see this remarkable sort of second or third life for a lot of great games that make it to iOS and to Android. And so if we could take some of that, like, you don't need the same camera capabilities, you probably don't need the same networking capabilities, but if we could put like a purpose-built power chip into a larger surface area'd type of handheld, that to me makes a lot of sense for bumping up power, knowing that you've got the battery capacity to match it, and then you can probably do a better job of getting heat out of that whole apparatus.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, and I see one of the live chats here says the faux Stream Deck, and I'm like, okay, I do get where this sentiment is coming from. I pre-ordered a Steam Deck, sorry, Steam Deck. I did order one as well. I did pre-order one, and I want to get my hands on stuff like that as well. Like having a portable gaming machine monster is a great thing, but to sort of minimize an Android/mobile gaming console to just like, oh, it's trying to be like something else, to me is like a little bit too reductive. Because let's put it this way, if you are ever that kind of gamer that actually gravitated to something like the Razer Kishi or the backbone for your phone, like, you are the customer for this thing. You are the customer for this kind of gaming console, because you are a mobile gamer and now you have the best possible apparatus for it. See, I'm like you, Juan. Like, I have that as well, except I put mine on an 8-bit dough, and that is exactly the setup that I would have. Like, if you are that kind of gamer, this is a product that is great for you. I say product, it's a developer kit. It's not out yet, obviously, but yes, right there. I think there's actually a big enough market of people like that who would benefit from this kit being a real product.
Oh no, absolutely. That was the biggest thing that I when I saw
so many comments
the
on my
form
video
factor,
were like, "Oh, it's trying to be a PSP." It's like, well, yeah.
well, where's the PSP Vita?
Exactly.
No, it's a format that I felt like it's for when you just want to play. Like when you were talking about the connectivity, Juan, you had it right on there. It's not trying to be a phone. It's not trying to be a phone that plays game. It's literally focusing. The entire performance on this is dedicated to gaming. It is running Android. Surprisingly, it does have a phone UI element because it's still in the development kit. Actually, when you boot it up, because I had to turn mine on, it actually does. Whenever you have a rooted device, it looked like it was still basically you need to press power twice before you can actually jump into it, since the bootloader is unlocked. So it has a lot of development features in it. I'm hoping it does make it to the market, but it is the potential of what the G3X can do that I'm enjoying here.
I would wholly expect that what you guys have seen, what we've seen from the outside, I seriously doubt that's consumer facing. I really have to.
Yeah,
believe
it will come up in maybe a different form, a different product at some point. They wouldn't confirm or deny, but every time I ask the question, I get a big smile on the PR person's face. It's like, we'll see what happens in 2022.
I'm calling it right now. At CES, Razer is going to have something behind closed doors.
For sure. It'll be like, that thing you saw last week. Yeah, it's ready to go.
Or they might have it actually out like in one of those glass cases that no one can touch, because Razer loves to show that kind of stuff off. But
isn't
really,
it
I mean,
like 89% the way there though? Like, it's actually really well done already.
It has a lot. So I can definitely see some of the configurations at the bottom need a little bit of improvement. But I love the fact that it includes a headphone jack and an SD card port. So they're focusing on connectivity and sound, as well as expandable storage. So they're not trying to keep this whole remove all features. They're literally throwing everything in.
But this is to me that's like the most encouraging and also the most frustrating. Is it's really a chicken and the egg kind of problem. If you look at a modern mid-ranger smartphone, you probably have better overall capabilities than you would on a Nintendo Switch. Screen quality, refresh rate, horsepower.
Probably 90
and what we
90
need
hertz.
is the software to really take advantage of it, and then for developers to do a better job of supporting APIs like Vulkan, where we can realize some more substantial performance improvements. It's funny to me, like, to get some interest back into developers doing a better job of supporting Android as a platform, we have to make a thing that is recognizable as another thing. So all those people that are just sort of commenting, oh, they're just trying to be another PSP, or they're just trying to be another Nintendo Switch, like, you know what? If we could get people to stop like pretending that Android gaming stopped with Fruit Ninja, and realize like how many amazing games are actually on mobile, we wouldn't have to do this. But because we're still locked in this like Android, Kit Kat era of gaming conversation, now we need to go and make a thing that looks like a different thing that plays games, so that then developers will go, oh, hey, I could probably bring my game over to there and make some money on bringing a nicer version of that game over there. And then people like me will just be able to pull out their phones and the controllers that we've had for years now and play the game on the phone that was already good enough to play the game, if we had just acknowledged that we already had these gaming supercomputers in our pockets.
Yeah, and to the point of the same live chatter who said before, it's like the Steam Deck. I keep saying stream. You're right that these games need to natively support controllers, but sometimes, like you said, chicken and the egg. It's not until the market, or rather like the business side, actually shows that those solutions are available that developers finally go, oh, there we go. Now we can actually support it. We can actually put development towards that. And I think that's something like this development kit or whatever product it could become. It's the same thing as when you look at a tablet. Do I really need that? No, but it will make my life more fun. And it will make it so that I enjoy that type of experience.
Yeah, I'll find things to do with it.
Exactly. Right? And like, just think of the possibilities. And I know that we're all like, geeky and nerdy in this whole thing, and we are the people who would do this. But I think there is enough people. There are enough people who would look at that thing and think Game Pass, who would look at that thing and say remote play PS5, or even better, look at that thing and say emulator.
Absolutely. Yep.
Why the heck not?
And so the fact that it supports 4K 60 output on the Tier 2 TV, like they had it connected to 8K projectors in that room. That in the videos that you'll see that basically it was like a massive room with basically display for walls. It just showcases all the benefits that they could do with it, and whatever company decides to go with it. As far as sure Razer will probably have one, but at some point or another, obviously the ecosystem needs to have the peripherals and the accessories to make this connected device that is online, because you are able to get millimeter wave on it as well as sub-6 5G. A 6,000 milliampere battery for long playtime. I would have loved a little bit bigger, but again, the reference device is 6,000. It could be even bigger. The biggest thing I would love about it is...
If Qualcomm would lead the charge on something like HS power control, I wouldn't be as concerned about the battery charge discharge of when it's being plugged in and being used. I still feel like
replaceable batteries. Yeah, it's very much a closed Steam Deck type of a. Yeah, you need like a.
But again, I think this is a wonderful opportunity to nail this messaging right now, because a bunch of geeks like me and Josh are going to be waiting until Q2 of next year before we'll be able to throw money at Valve to get our Steam Deck.
That's true.
They pushed everybody. No. It's.
Yeah, I remember getting that email and I was like. I was not surprised,
heartbroken.
To be honest. I was heartbroken.
Not surprised,
I wasn't surprised. Yeah.
But I was kind of heartbroken. I was really hoping.
Because by the time it comes out, it's still. Unless they're going to change something to the hardware, though. How much can you go to the right with timeline, and still be somewhat relevant? It's. My worry is, so whenever it does come in, that means everybody that was originally in January is now at maybe mid to late 2022. Does that make sense for people to still wait that long for a next-gen console? Because by then, somebody else is going to come out. So, I guess...
It's kind of interesting because we keep falling into these holding pattern traps. Like, look at next-gen consoles, PS5 and Xbox Series X. There aren't any crazy bundles or sales this holiday season because legitimately... people still don't really have them to the quantity that these companies would like to see out there in the marketplace. Steam Deck coming late is a massive bummer, but we're already seeing a trend in so many of these like little experiments, companies that want to play with handheld gaming or portable gaming or PC gaming or game streaming and having those solutions. So this market is about to crack wide open. And without the same concentration of consoles from Sony and Microsoft that normally would have been sold over this time period, the Nintendo Switch is getting a little long in the tooth. I think the OLED, resells are probably kind of peaking for the people that are interested in picking up the Switch right now. Like
Yeah,
this
holiday
is
time,
the
obviously.
opportunity
Yeah.
to bring PC gaming and Android gaming to the forefront with something that's kind of purpose built for that solution.
And you can't, and if mobile gaming is like it's the fastest growing category out there, and you want to make it a seasonal thing that you can actually take advantage of, you're not going to do it by telling people you need to buy another phone.
Yeah.
You're going to do it by saying you need to buy a dedicated gaming device.
Yeah, no, compartmentalizing it and making it functional. They're also, I mean, if you remember at the announcement, they announced a partnership with ESL. I mean, they're trying to go into basically,
Yeah.
competitive, mobile gaming is actually pretty big. I remember attending one of their events in Paris a couple of years, 3 years ago for Honor, because Honor was trying to sponsor ESL as well. So it's a big. It's crazy how much the pandemic has shown us how much we depend on our devices, but the fact that our devices can do so much that we may not even have thought that this is possible. But the reason why I appreciate this is because I want to be able to dedicate my time on a device to play the games that I want, any game that it would run on Android. And then again, like Josh was saying, emulation is also a big part. Whenever you get a gaming phone, literally one of the things you could definitely do for benchmarking it is how well does it run emulators. Just to run emulators, it's just one of the biggest things. So I really want to see this come out. They didn't let us
I just
load
hope it
anything.
kind of
I was trying.
curbs some of those nerdcore conversations where you pick up any phone and you always run into like, oh, but it doesn't do that as good or as it should. And for gaming phones, it's almost always going to be like, it doesn't have the bestest cameras. And you're like, yeah, but it's a phone for
Why are you
gaming.
Yeah, it's like you.
So I guess now that means instead of having a phone that's really good at gaming and just has very good cameras instead of the bestest cameras, now you can go and buy your bestest camera phone and buy a whole other portable computing device so that you can also play your games and have two things instead of one that probably would have gotten that job done better. But what do I know? I just get to play with all of these things and share my thoughts on them. So.
Because that's how you do it.
I think, well, yeah,
So
consumerism at its best, right? So you have
Exactly.
you have
Why-
your- yeah.
Why have one computer when more computer better, right? So there you
That's
go.
the equation, right?
But
One plus one computer equals more better.
But speaking of computers, as my terrible segue, I wanna shift this over and transfer because I think there was like a trio of big announcements.
It is.
And the other major announcement was Qualcomm kind of rededicating some conversation to the PC space,
the
talking about
ATX.
Windows on ARM,
Gen 3.
and that this is an interesting position for them to be in because we know. They've already been public about some of their efforts for chipsets into 2023 being sort of the redesigns and the refinements that they would like to showcase against what Apple is doing with their M series processors. But that doesn't mean that they don't have something to show for improving performance, improving power with this new generation of more laptop style SoC. And so I'm sure you guys got to hear a little bit about that during this event too.
I don't really follow the stuff quite as much. I know that, well, in the lexicon of all of these processors and products that we have in the computing space, probably I know the least about the HCX. I do remember getting a shot at the Gen 1 with the Surface Pro X, and it was a good time.
That's right, in 2019.
Yeah, that was a good time. My only problem with it, though, and I think it's a very common discussion when it comes to this chip or any ARM chip, really, is just that there's not enough support from applications to make these actually that viable. Like, the best way for me to put it is the HCX Gen 3, in this case, is more or less like a really beefed up Chromebook. And it'll do a lot of really good stuff, but I am not the market for that because it won't run the things I need to run. And even they on stage were comparing the HCX Gen 3, and I think it was a good move personally just to manage expectations. They were comparing it to an i5, right? So that was like, oh, okay, I get where this is supposed to be. I get where this is supposed to be positioned in the greater scheme.
It's my biggest concern, my biggest So this is the reason why Apple's M series is working so well.
But by the way, you will not believe how many people have.
This could have been the Qualcomm
It's gotta be
event,
everybody.
not sponsored by Apple. I felt weird with a PC No. The approach that Apple has right now is that you pick up an M series laptop, be it an Air, be it whichever version that they're selling, it feels like it's a laptop. It runs applications like a laptop. It has all the ecosystem and everything, and you don't have to worry about emulators just to get things to run the way they're supposed to on your system. And I feel like HCX or always connected Windows 11 or Windows 10 PCs right now are struggling in that aspect because the consumer that wants to pick up a computer that is ARM-based as opposed to a x86 is expecting the x86 experience on that more power efficient, better battery life, always on connected, insert all benefits of HCX. And we're not there yet. This is the concern. Even Windows 11 still doesn't give us that same capabilities. We're still having to deal, and they talked about it. They had the CEO.
I don't know.
They literally had a live session between him and Cristiano on stage. But I feel like that's the bottleneck. I don't think it's Qualcomm. I feel like the conversation that Qualcomm is trying to do is they're showing their commitment to the ecosystem and that they want to keep building hardware and help develop better hardware for when Windows is able to take advantage of the existing ecosystem, and we're able to basically start having an ARM PC being less expensive, more power, not as powerful, but connected, and you have the benefits of the mobile ARM ecosystem, and still have the same experience as if you were running on an Intel or an AMD chipset. And till that happen, we're still going to be working with more. Some people are going to buy it. It's not going to be.
I don't know what
biggest.
pushes that over the edge, because this is the dance that Microsoft has been doing since Windows RT.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
We've been trying to talk about other ways that we can incorporate, Microsoft style computing into more portable and power efficient styles of computer. And because of the overwhelming momentum of the traditional x86 market, and where Microsoft has really carved out their overwhelmingly dominant market position on that side, it seems very difficult to get any kind of developer interest in trying to port or natively support ARM hardware on the Windows side of the equation. And I'm hoping that Windows 11 is actually going to start pushing some of that conversation, some of that narrative, especially for things like, Windows 11 finally brings us like different processor core arrangement support, so you can have big power cores and little power efficiency cores. Like Intel's we're so impressed that now we've got little cores on an Intel processor. That's amazing. And here we are, we've had supercomputers in our pockets that have been doing that for a while. But until we see that Adobe and DaVinci Resolve and like these media companies are going to give Microsoft the same kind of attention and the same kind of runway that they give Apple, I fear we're going to be in for a much longer holding pattern. Like you were saying, TK, it's really not the hardware. It's getting Microsoft to instill enough confidence in developers that this is the time to really get after that sort of efficiency. That to me is what's concerning. Again, we'll give Apple as much runway as they need. You need 2 years to finally give us better support for external monitors on a MacBook. Well, yes, Apple, you'll do it right after 2 years. We're sure your products will work great. But in the first week of release on a Windows on ARM device, it doesn't run my obscure DOS 3.0 program. This is garbage. Microsoft fails
run
again.
Oregon Trail? Are you kidding me?
It doesn't run my WordPerfect off my floppy disk. It just doesn't have to do it.
Are they missing the forest for the trees here? Because I wonder if I get it. They really want to make HCX Gen 1 and beyond and ARM processors a thing. I get it. That's totally going to be, that's a great business move and all that stuff. But are they missing the forest for the trees here if they're not just making it very specific to, let's say, enterprise solutions? Because clearly it supports all of that. So why keep pushing this to consumers when clearly there's no support for consumer grade products? If it's going to be, because what has Microsoft been doing for all of its existence? Enterprise solutions. And this seems like these ARM processors seem to be perfect for that because all those apps work. Right?
But to your point, Josh, I think us in the techie space, we've got this huge blind spot where I don't know why, but I think tech reviewers have been really reluctant to acknowledge the enormous elephant in the room for consumer grade computing and education that Chromebooks are gobbling up like crazy. And Microsoft wants a part of that. But you can go and get a MediaTek powered Chromebook for like $250.
Yep.
right?
We were
so
given
until
We were given one. My son is
So-
actually on this trip doing his homework. But yeah,
So I feel that contributes, but again, we don't tend to acknowledge that. You know, like Apple's laptop sales have been gangbusters since the M1, but right up before that M1 launch, Chromebooks were grossly outselling all of the gains that Apple had made in the laptop space. So again, you know, like we know Microsoft is looking at that. We know Microsoft has to be paying attention to that, and it's just curious to me that we keep seeing these like stop-start efforts like it's Windows 8. Okay, wait, no, what we really mean is it's Windows 10. No, you know what? Windows 11. That's gonna be the one. And I understand why that kind of puts developers off. Like, you know, I'm just gonna wait until this is all sorted, and when consumers have bought a bunch of stuff, then we'll go out and support it. But that never works.
Yeah.
That's not the
It
way that this
doesn't-
all
yeah,
happens. So that power price performance, again, I still feel like if you've got a mid-ranger phone that was made within the last 2 years, you probably have more computer than you need in your pocket. That's the power that our average consumers really need to make it through their day on a desktop, on a laptop, or on a smartphone. And,
yeah,
and
totally.
so the idea that we could already be, like for my aunt, she doesn't need, you know, a Core i7. She doesn't. She could legitimately, if she had like the same kind of work style interface and she was on, you know, a Snapdragon 765, that's her speed. And to think that she could probably be on like a $300 or $400 laptop if we could just get the software there, it would be really exciting to me. That to me would be the right fit for her needs, not for mine, but for hers. And I think a lot of consumers are kind of poking around and looking at this, and then you go and see, you know, a MacBook Air on sale for like $800. That starts to make a lot of sense. And you know, the battery life is there, the performance is there. That's really interesting. So
the development support is there. Oh, yeah, no, I mean it's.
And developers are always willing to extend that extra little bit of consideration for those Apple computers that they would never give to a Windows machine. But that's kind of like where I just find all of this really interesting. I'm really happy that Qualcomm has decided to deliver a refinement. They're not completely out of the conversation. We know this isn't their show pony. Their show pony is coming next year. But if you just disappear from the scene, it makes this whole conversation even harder. Like if we had to do another
banking
year
on
on the
future.
last
Absolutely.
generation laptop processor, that would be a non-starter. It'd be dead. It'd just be totally dead.
Oh, I totally agree. I just wonder if, you know, maybe the road to what will eventually come could be more optimized. Because if we
It
have,
needs to be for sure. Yeah.
yeah, because like maybe that should be the marketing that we are seeing on stage, which is the 8CX
Yeah.
is better than your Chromebook for what you do in education, or you do in business, or you do in enterprise. And to that
Yeah.
point, you know, not to go too far back, but if millimeter wave is meant to be a full consumer ready thing that also powers whole cities, maybe we don't want to go straight to make sure a millimeter wave is for all consumers. Maybe we go from the stadium to the restaurant around the street, or maybe we go from the stadium to the shopping mall across
Shopping
across
malls
town.
actually would be amazing. Yeah,
Exactly.
Those,
So
those are the connected
we need
places.
there are all these steps between the full-on enterprise thing to the consumer thing that I feel like they never think about.
No.
Or maybe they are, but we never get to hear about it. And I think those stories are the things that we could actually sell as creators, as influencers, and we
Yeah.
could actually tell about those things, and those make sense.
For sure.
It's just up until then, we're just hoping, like you said, holding patterns.
It's holding, but this is definitely a precursor conversation for next year's announcements, and of course leading into 2023. So we'll have to see basically. It'll be interesting to see if how many companies do showcase some HCX SoCs actually at CES. Hopefully we'll start seeing some companies showing. I think I saw a what's it called, an IBM ThinkPad, an X1 series. Somebody was showing pictures. I forget. So they are obviously HPs involved in the conversation. Not to kind of circle back on gaming, but in the gaming room while we were playing, with the 3GX, development kit, they did have actually some, HCX PCs running games as well, and they were connected.
Asphalt.
Yeah, I know. I feel like companies love Asphalt. It's like the default to go-to game of, like, as if all
And
of
you're
us
like,
sitting at
I
home.
can
we're
play
like,
Asphalt on a Snapdragon 660 on a 4-year-old Huawei.
Dude, I can play Asphalt with my eyes closed and I would still win. But what I meant to say is I don't understand like the more demanding. Like we did get a chance to play with Final Fantasy VII on it. That was
Great
actually
move.
also that was a very nice game.
Great for them to put it on there, yeah.
The game, the graphics, everything in there was really nice. But what my hope is, what we saw this year at least is we see that Qualcomm is focusing on connectivity and gaming and compute power. The improvements on the Gen 8 obviously are there is improvements in performance. Obviously, we'll have to see how the power management is done, or at least the heat generated from the new power requirements. Although maybe lower, again, we'll have to see how much by comparison. The one thing that I appreciated from the conversation when I started looking at it is they did focus a little bit more on photography and improving the ISP configuration that we have in here. They changed. We went up to an 18-bit ISP. But it's also concurrent stream recording on the ISP. It's not just ability of connecting. It's one of the demos that they had was a triple camera configuration where you're able to record from the ultra-wide, the standard focal, and the telephoto at the same time in 3 separate files straight onto the memory directly of your system. Now, mind you, I don't think it's a very functional way of using your cameras because you're not really focusing or framing for anything.
And you get about 15 seconds before all of that hardware overheats. So
It's
See, this is a thing that I keep thinking about. It's like normally every year.
So I played with a Leica, by the way.
he went
I was playing
straight
with
to
the
like
Leica 1 or the
Captain
Leica
Picard facepalm. Oh
no.
God.
But here's my problem with this is that every year by now we have these Snapdragon announcements that include a lot of great camera enhancements and all of that stuff.
Always.
But I think it's been at least 3 years by now that I have looked at everything Qualcomm has said on that stage and I went, I never use that. And it's like, I know that this is coming from a jaded place, but it's just that for what I actually do, for what the practical person actually uses on the daily, no one has used 8K on a phone since Samsung tried to put it out on the S10.
It eats up memory.
Or S10, S20, S20.
S20.
Yeah, on the S20. I don't think it was on the 10. Yeah, it's a feature. But again, it's like saying millimeter wave. It's like saying 8K. They're obviously shooting for the bestest of everything that they can do, and those are the things they're trying to showcase. But the reality is that anybody shooting, even if you do shoot in 8K, let's say you are in that moment, you do want to get that beautiful sunset, and you want to get it in 8K HDR. You're not going to share it because it's not going to be true to what you shot. By the time it gets compressed to whatever ecosystem that you're sharing it with.
How long will Bluetooth take to transfer
absolutely,
that?
yeah. And or even if you're trying to basically even like send that file to a family member, it's like, again,
Nope.
we're not there, but they're still, I think this is the biggest thing. Companies love to showcase these things. I wanted to see more of the capabilities, the refinements, the improvements in image processing, some of those other things that we wanted to see. Like they brought motion blur in there, they brought bokeh, video bokeh. The reality is we've had other companies showcase this technology before. Video bokeh was not, but it's
Right.
it's going to bring that technology to other companies that didn't have it. I feel like to a certain point, it's nice. Is it going to?
It gives us a
some more
baseline.
It is a
Yeah.
baseline, absolutely.
For sure.
I think that's the biggest thing. But it is going to end up becoming a thing where it's at the OEM level to what they customize. Because this is literally we're measuring now the reference device that we had. It's literally everything, including the kitchen sink. But we rarely ever get a phone that includes everything. And then this also the software processing from each company. Like an Oppo or a Sony or a OnePlus, they're not going to have the same processing as a Samsung or let's say even as a Pixel. So you're going to have to really.
Well, which I do have to say, like I give Qualcomm a lot of credit because while certain things about the Snapdragon, in this case 8 Gen 1, I feel we're hitting a plateau when it comes to certain things that they are able to offer, which is not to say they aren't pushing the envelope. It's just these are not things that I feel like I'm actually going to practically use on the daily. On the other hand, at least they had the wherewithal. At least they had the wherewithal to have another announcement that I need that in my life right now. And that's, of course, the developer kit, the G3X
The
for sure.
G3X was definitely.
Thank God they had that in
And they had a demo. Thank God that they had a demo for us to be able to try. I did mention it last time when we were saying when we were over at the MediaTek Tech Summit. I told them, I said, realistically, you have to capture the excitement of where everybody's excited for you on the brand new announcement, and try to get something in our hands to be able to showcase. Because at the end of the day, that's the best way for us to relay that excitement and showcase how these things could be. And even if it's not a final product or whatever. And I feel like with Qualcomm, we definitely saw that. That was definitely a better delivery.
I got the biggest incredulous look from a couple of our friends here at Qualcomm when they were asking for like honest, candid feedback. And I thought, here's an idea. What if you could please both camps here? Because there is a camp like us. Well, okay, more me, I would say, where I'm not trying to get all the numbers. I'm not trying to get the 3.5 gigabits or anything like that. I'm not trying to do all of the benchmarking. I'm not quite that user. Like, I understand it, but I'm not quite that user. And then there's a whole other group where they're like, give me the numbers. Yeah, I need more. You need to share more. You need to tell me more about this. I need to know what the gigaflops are. All these things, and they those are two different groups. And I said, what if you had enough devices for all of us to use throughout the entire summit?
Yeah,
So that
would've been
those
amazing.
people could do all of their testing. We could do our lifestyle stuff. What if we could do that? And I got the biggest eye roll. Not because it wasn't a good idea, but because they said, we literally cannot make that many devices. Like, there's no way.
Here's a little bit of a BTS. Did you know, or I don't know if you were the one who even told me this, but every test device that we were holding in our hand cost $12K. It's so custom. It's so small quantity
I
production.
totally believe it though.
that for they would have to have it in.
Hence, eye roll.
Yeah. I think what would probably happen is that the tech summit would be basically hosted at a Motel 6, and everybody would have a phone. Because the budget would be shifted to the production. It'll be
But you
one
know
of those,
what?
yeah.
I'd take that. Like
I wanted to
if it
spend more
meant,
time
like-
with it.
Yeah.
No. So the way they had them set up too is they didn't have one device that ran everything. So you could see the different things
Yeah,
that
they
they're
had
doing.
to segment.
They had one phone that ran the video bokeh, one phone that ran the triple
Panorama.
camera or the panorama.
Yeah.
So another one for panorama, and then another one for 8K recording, and they were all segmented. So you never really had. The hardware is really, really referenced. I mean, it's not really intended to be.
Oh no, you're telling me that Qualcomm can't turn on all of their own switches?
It is very much it's an experience type of a phone. But I will say though that the hardware would definitely look much better than the reference devices that we saw a couple of years ago, where everything looked like it was missing panels from the back or something like that. So, regardless, I think that what we saw this this tech summit is a very big promise from Qualcomm to provide a lot of capabilities, and hopefully they deliver with improvements in power requirements as well as heat dissipation or heat generation, at least from the mobile tech. I think that's been you and I, Juan, we've talked about it many times, as well as Josh. Devices that run on the 888 ran hot. We know that, especially if you try to play games for an extended amount of time. And I feel like that's going to be the tackling approach that we're going to need to see in 2022. 2020 or 2021, they were surprised with how much power and how much heat these devices are generating. I'm hoping that they've done course corrections and they're going to put in better heat, thermal management or some type of system that allows them to manage the power that the new SoC is going to bring.
it was.
It's the next
I want to start
generation.
wrapping this up so that you guys can go have like the rest of your evening and stuff here.
It's already,
And
happens. Now it flies
we
by.
obviously we always go long. Sorry, Josh.
No,
but-
don't apologize to me. I'm happy to be here. Don't worry.
But
I
it was
promised them 10
also
minutes at the beginning. By the way, it was.
but it was the
And that's how we
it
lost
was that one slide from the actually I think it was an ARM slide. It wasn't a MediaTek slide, but they're talking about the Cortex X2.
Oh, that's right.
And you see the Cortex X1 versus the Cortex X2, and look at how much more powerful the Cortex X2 can get. And then you look
Yeah,
at the
we
little
had that
chart,
slide.
and you're like, yeah, it got like 16% more powerful. I mean, it got either 16% better performance, but at like 20% additional power draw. So why would you do that in a phone? You'd never be able to. We can't sustain the current level of performance that we've got here. That would tank you on an 888. Why would you want to push it that further? But then you follow the chart back, and if you match the performance of the 888, it comes in at like 15% less power draw. And you're like, you see, that would be better, because then we'd actually be sustaining that performance better. As we got into the end of 2021, all of these phones that have performed better, like the Vivo. The Vivo's been rocking my socks, but the Vivo is not one of the top peak wind sprint performers of all the 888s. They're definitely managing what that what that chip is doing inside that phone, and they're definitely reining in some of that peak performance so that you don't cook the inside of that device in almost the polar opposite way of how Xiaomi kicked off the 888 era,
absolutely.
where those phones had like no limits. you could run that phone as hot as you wanted to, and your games would crash, and like your UI would stutter, but you got every ounce of power out of the A88 that you could get. And so that, to me, again, it becomes that kind of concern where, like you would say, Josh, like there's a certain benchmarking idea where it's cool to have big number, but we've already made these SoCs really way too good at running benchmarks, and I don't feel that enough of those improvements have actually made it to even heavy lifting. Like when I'm talking, I cut my family Thanksgiving video on a phone, 4K anamorphic, doing speed ramping from 4K 60 frames per second video. I love my family. I put in the time because this was a special Thanksgiving to really try and make a cinematic Turkey Day video happen. But like the phones I did that on weren't the peakest performers because those A88s run too hot for me to reliably edit video sometimes. So it's kind of a mess right now.
Of editing, and then it started to dip.
Ow, 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 ow.
Yeah. Fridge, right now. I was very proud of myself this time that at this event I produced so much of my content on my phone. I did not necessarily have to go back to my PC as much. I mean, I did push out a couple of videos, but yeah, most of it was done producing content for different styles. I've even posted things on YouTube and so on, so I'm trying to keep it very light, very mobile, but editing content on the phone is really the next. We need to be able to rely on our devices to perform as good as they need to, because they're literally, when you say pocket PCs, they are pocket PCs. They can do so much more than what we use them for. Mm-hmm. So that was the biggest thing for me. I mean, this is why the G3X is very exciting for me, because it focuses on an aspect of my experience on the smartphone that I feel like if I try doing this on my main phone in my pocket all the time, it's just going to kill the battery and I'm not going to be able to use my phone all the time. I'd prefer that be in the ecosystem. So, like I said, 2022 is going to be an interesting year with SoCs specifically. More players are jumping into the game. We have MediaTek stepping up and trying to literally take on the biggest player in the room. Obviously, at that point, by the end of the year, we'll see Tensor. Hopefully, in the second generation, we need to see what Samsung's going to be playing as well. If Oppo decides to start making their own SoC and more companies start doing so,
God, it's going to be so crazy for talking about all this stuff, because it's like
absolutely
increasingly.
It's going to get into,
no, I mean, to your point, increasingly it's like, oh yeah, but one has a bigger Geekbench score is going to be flipping irrelevant.
Everybody's going to be like, yeah, because I actually said that to the guys over when I was doing benchmark. I can say this part, because he was like, they were asking me which benchmark do you prefer and all of that. I told him, look, benchmarks are great for reference.
You're like, life.
No. I responded back to them and I said, look, realistically, benchmarks are not everything. They're not the life. Nobody. I told them I've never known.
They're barely a place to start the conversation anymore.
Yeah. I said they never spend all day. Like all I do is benchmarks, man. I don't use my phone. I'm just benchmarking it all day long.
We're going to be back at this conversation again in about 8 months when they have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 Plus.
It's exactly. Oh yeah. I'm actually still waiting to find out how they're going to name the offsets. Like
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. The 7 series, the 6 series, and all that other stuff.
So again. This is the right time for Qualcomm to not do that. Give us an off year where you focus on your main product lines, getting the branding out to the consumers, getting all of your partners on the same page, and letting it roll. So I'm going to say let's go ahead and cap it there. We can start wrapping this show up. But I'm really glad you guys were able to catch all of this, and Josh, definitely, man, it's always great to have you jump in and
I
chat
just
on this
realized
kind of stuff.
Hold on, we're gonna do this real quick. Hold on.
Oh, we're doing it live. This is
Yeah,
very exciting.
Yeah.
Should put it the other way around. We're sitting in the wrong spot. Look! Oh my God!
Adorable.
Like the big. It has been. It is. It's a lot of fun work. A lot of actually, I haven't slept right in the last few days. Well, the time, I didn't think the time difference was going to hit me that much, but we were trying to figure out the time of when we were going to do the podcast tonight. I didn't realize it was much later for you because the whole difference, and I'm waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking it's my time, and it's.
Oh yeah, and on that note, we appreciate you for being up that late over there.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate you
back on the West Coast. Yeah,
working with because had we done it tomorrow, I wouldn't have been able to get Josh on because he actually jets out early.
I leave at 7:30 a.m.
In less than 12 hours, he'll be on a flight. But I do want to say thank you to everybody obviously hanging out with us. Aditya, Ranesh, everybody hanging out with us as well. Greg, it's exciting. We're having a lot of fun, but the conversation isn't over. So obviously, we'll have more things to cover, more things to showcase, and hopefully next week we'll have a different conversation when we're able to talk a little bit more, maybe performance information after
indeed.
we're able to basically, kind of digest some of the stuff that we went through today.
Yeah.
So
I love
with
how
that being
you
said-
kind of made that sound like a threat. Like, I know we had this. We know we had fun tonight, but the conversation isn't over.
Yeah.
We're gonna come back to this.
Well,
We
I mean,
joked. We
there's
joked
more to
about
say.
it. But Geekbench is coming back.
Geekbench is coming back, man. It's back with a vengeance. You're going to be living Geekbench all day. I'm actually jokingly.
Refuse.
Would that be fun to do, like a phone, like you charge up your phone to 100% and you run Geekbench as many times as possible and see how many times can you run it before you kill the battery? Because you basically running it at peak performance the whole time. So it'll be
Just like how average consumers use their phones. That's what
Exactly.
we're real worried about, are the average consumers who buy
Average consumer
$1,500 phones and only care about Geekbench scores and using their cameras in full auto in 1080p video.
No, I know.
That consumer totally exists.
No, always.
And on that
On
note,
that note, thank you, Aditya, Juan, chat, everybody, and I hope you guys had a great week. I'll try to be with you back again on Saturday, and of course, Juan Carlos will be back with us on Monday with the SGTQA. Also, make sure to check out Josh's podcast with the Pocket Not Podcast, because you guys did that early, and I think it goes up tomorrow morning. Or
yeah, likely tomorrow while I'm waiting for my next plane in San Francisco.
So yeah, as he's
Perfect.
plane hopping, his podcast will be also kind of going up, and I'll make sure to update the show notes with the links to be able to find out where where Josh hangs out and where does actually, if you want to plug it, where can people find you, Josh? Sorry.
Honestly, just on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Joshua Vergara. Perfectly fine to do that. And yeah, you can find everything else via that. So I'm definitely I did put out a video about my 5 takeaways from Snapdragon Summit, so there are some thoughts about that. But spoiler alert, but also not really, because we talked about it here. The last 3 minutes, it's just all G3X, as it should be. So there you go.
It literally, it was a surprise. It was a surprise, and it's just a very fun piece of hardware. And like I said, refreshing to see new tech and pushing things. Like you said, Juan, it's going to help mobile devices and gaming on mobile. But the fact that it's new, it's something that we need to hopefully see developers and and publishers actually jump behind. So we'll have to see.
Remember to change the name tag before your next podcast.
Or don't.
It'll be Saturday morning with TK Love JV, and everybody will be like, and watch Issa jump on the chat. It's like, okay, TK, he's taken, right? It's not going to happen. So, but thank you, everybody. You guys have a good night. Stay safe and be safe, and we'll see you next week for another episode for the best of our week. We'll be back at home base for both Juan and I, and so we'll be able to have a little bit more normal conversations. Take care, everybody.
Bam.